Hello everyone, and welcome to another video in our consciousness evolution system. Today's video is number 3 in the series, and we are going to tackle what I would consider quite a large topic. It's going to entail moving through the entire cycle, going through from the fall to awakening to purification. For video number 4, I'm going to leave that for the last quadrant by itself because it entails so many parts that is really geared to help us from an esoteric standpoint that I'd like to dedicate one video for that. It would be good to actually have a video for each quadrant, but I'm gonna see if I can compress most of this into one video for the first 3. All right, so quadrant number 1 is considered the fall. So what is this fall? From all the books that I've read, they start with the fall. The Bible starts with the fall. We call it a creation story, which is really what it is, but it's a fall nevertheless. And if you go into the Bhagavad Gita, you'll see that as well. You go into the Upanishad, you'll see that. You go into the Corpus Hermeticus, the Corpus Hermeticum, you'll see that. So all these books, they give you the same thing that says, okay, the first part is a fall. And that fall is what gets us into this dimension that we're in. Now, what's different from some of the other sacred books to the Bible is like the reason for the fall. When I read the Bible, because I was brought up as a Methodist, when I read the Bible, that was a creation story in Genesis, and it's how everything got created. Well, I didn't get it from there that there was a fall. Now, it's really interesting having the word fall because the word fall gives a connotation of something bad that happened. It's not at all like that in the other books. It's not the fall didn't take place because something bad happened. The fall took place because of the fact that we needed to be here to experience something. And I think it's that experience and the fact that it's labeled as a descent, and the translation of all these sacred texts from, whether it's from Greek to or from Mesopotamian language to Greek to Italian to English, and trying to get the right word to express exactly what the original intent of the word was. So the first part is that it's a descent. This is when the creator, nous, or whatever that being is. I like to call that being source, right? So I'm going to say source. It says, this is what source did. So one other thing about the fall here is that it's not, we didn't fall into sin. It's not fallen angels because we are kicked out of heaven. It's not fall because there is something bad that we need to go through. We're here because this is a great place to experience certain things that we cannot experience in other realm. This is a theme of experiencing light. It is an experience of light. And so in light, we can come into matter. And so when we come into matter, we experience certain things. And so it's created with duality. It's created with all the different things that we are going through. We know what that is because we're experiencing it. So we have this opportunity to then experience something different. It's expected to challenge us. It's expected that when we come in, we're going to be required to do certain things. Now, the interesting thing about the fall is that in order for us to really experience these events as best as possible, it was necessary for us to forget. So the first glitch, if you were to call it that for us, is the fact that we forgot. But the forgetting was the great part. The second part is we forgot, but when we got here, we fell in love. So the whole thing about why we are here and the reason we are doing this over and over is it's because of love. It's because of desire, attachment. So it's all those different things that we have here that we're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. So we're going to stay. So with that, it's almost like someone said, I am going to go to XYZ country. And I'm going to go there for a little while. And when I go, I'm going to be able to experience everything that it has. And then I'm going to come back home. Well, they went there and it's almost like they had amnesia and they remember nothing about where they were, where they came from. And they're like, they went into this place and they're happy or they're sad. But they have no other recollection of anything else. So therefore, they aren't looking at it to say, hey, you know what? I was a king or queen in XYZ place. And I wanted to see what it felt like living as a pauper or living as a scared person, but I couldn't do that in my own country because everybody knows me. So I'm going to go into this other place where no one knows me and pretend that this is the case. But in order for me to do that, I need to forget. So let's do something that I can have amnesia, forget everything, and I'm going to go there. Then when I go there was nothing there to trigger me to remember where I came from. However, the trigger was that I had to work through these challenges. And while going through the challenges, it will activate my memory for my return. That basically is our scenario. We were placed into a situation and then we are supposed to activate the memory for our return. Now, what's with the fall? Here is how some of the books explain this. The Bible itself is a storybook. It gives literal stories that you can use as examples for the things that that we're supposed to do. The other books are written in allegory, or they might be written literarily. So there are different symbolisms that is supposed to help us to understand what to do. So without further ado, let me jump into what some of these books say about the fall. So the first one is the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis chapters 1 to 3 is nothing but explaining the fall to us and really what happened. And when it says we ate off the tree of knowledge, well, it's actually eating off the tree of knowledge of this dimension, is seeing this dimension. And once we're in this dimension, then it says that we went into sin. Again, it's the sine wave for where we are. That's through the holy religion, the holy science. And so that's part of the first fall, because that's how we got in here. But I'm not going to go too much as to the getting in. Now that we're here, now what happened? Well, love. Ecclesiastes 1, I'm going to tell you something from verse 2 and maybe verse 18. But it speaks about vanity. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. For in much wisdom is much grief. The increase of knowledge is the increase of sorrow. First, in Hebrew, the word vanity means vapor, mist, impertinence. It's something that goes. Okay? And so, what we are accustomed to, the vanity of vanities, we are attaching ourselves to things that are not permanent. And we fall in love with these. Then the love causes desire. The desire causes attachment. The attachment causes us to want to protect it. And that protection itself causes us to be hateful and angry, because, we're going to protect these things that we have at all cost. This attachment then forms our inner demon. And that's not hard to see, right? Just look around. We are, all of us, attached to something, right? And that's the pull of this third dimension. And that's where the fall is. So that is why the first part is going down into the fall. What we're doing during that period of time, from birth to 30, is we are getting buried by everything that is in this illusion, is what some of the texts call it. Maya is from, I think Maya is Hindu, I don't remember, but Maya is one of them as well. Buddha says that it's an illusion. Time is a prison. We might go through some things like that as well. So it's for us to seek wisdom after that. But we're going down into this illusion, and we're getting trapped as we go through it. So here is how some of these texts express this trap for where we are. The Corpus Hermeticum is the first one I'm going to read from. That's in book 1 from the Paimandri. It says, men, being lovers of the body and of the world, do wander in darkness. Again, expressing the idea of love being why we're here. So what happens after we love? In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, what is night to all being is the time of awakening for the self-control. What is night to all being is awakening for the self-control. That is because if you are awakened, we realize the illusion, and this whole section that is supposed to be night, we are using it as the catalyst to rise again on the other side. Okay, and that's the whole process of going into the darkness, and then we'll die, right, and be born again before we rise. We'll see that coming up. What does the Upanishad say? The self-existence pierced the opening of the senses outward. So we, instead of looking inward, we look outward. Hence, one looks outward, not within. So one of the trap is that we are always looking outwards. We're looking outwards for everything else that says, okay, this is why we do what we do. We are always either blaming a system that's on the outside, blaming a person that's on the outside, and stuff like that. So we're looking outside, we're not looking on the inside. When the best way to get redemption is to look on the inside. And here, Buddha says, hatred does not cease by hatred. This is an eternal law. So we can't be going through those and expect that we are going to get better. This is one of the reasons I really wanted to do this, to say, let us bring all the different texts and books together, because we should do this as a collective and realize that the different society and cultures aren't wrong, and we should not be fighting against each other. We should figure out how to utilize all these different texts to come together as best as we can. Because if we keep hating, that is not going to solve anything. So let me just go through this note that is here. It says, these texts exposes the illusion of worldly gain. All traditions teach that sorrow rises when the soul seeks permanence in an impermanent thing. Knowledge without spiritual depth becomes a burden. So I'm hoping that this is going to start to give us some spiritual depth. As I said, this is your journey, and what I'm trying to do is really broaden the scope for us, right? I'm not telling anyone that they need to take away from what they have, but it's to broaden the scope for us as best as possible. Also, I'll be going to Ecuador to celebrate the fall equinox this September 20th till the 25th. In the description below, I'll have all the information on that as to where we are going, what we're going to be doing. And so if you want to join us, I would really love to see you there. So head down in the description below and it will give you all the information on what's going on for this Ecuador trip to celebrate the fall equinox. Now back to the video. So let's go into another part about the fall, and this time we are going to address the ego and self-deception. Now, ego gets a bad rap, right? Ego, emotion, all those, they get a bad rap. But they're really there to protect us. If the ego gets to do what it really needs to do, and we understand how to work with the ego and work with the emotion in a healthy way, they are one of our best guidance system. Really, it's the best guidance system that we have. We were given those so that we can follow it. I mean, I really can't overemphasize this when I say, when you feel bad, hurt, hatred, this is telling you, well, when you feel it, the worse it feels, it's telling you how far you are away from your soul. Your soul understands what happiness is. Your soul understands what it is you are here to do. And the moment you are starting to go into hurt, it's telling you how far away you are. So in Proverbs, it says, there is a way that seemeth right unto man, but the end thereof is always death. This is Proverbs 14, verse 12, or somewhere around there. You can go check that out. It also says, all the ways of a man are clean in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit. I don't think we are saying anything earth-shattering there. Okay, we know that. But everything we do seems right. And I think the phrase says, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So Lamentations 3, I think 3 to 20. In Lamentations, it was going through this whole thing about the fall, right? And man, you bring me here, or I'm here, and I was fine, and you take me out of the light and bring me into darkness, and it's like you didn't give me any guidance as to what it is that I should do, and I am so I was happy there, but no, I'm not, and I got to be humble at the end. And yes, that humility is really what we require in order for us to get back. Because in order for us to get back there, that humility says, the hardest thing to do, we have to figure out how to not be associated with our history. Okay? Not be associated with our history. So my soul has them still in remembrance. So everything that we did before, the soul still remembers what they are. And the soul, we are always getting guided back to that. This is why, as I said, our emotion and our ego are navigation systems that will tell us one thing, unless we are so far gone that we've broken our navigation system. And that has happened. I mean, if you're out at sea and your compass is gone, or you have something that says, hey, north is that way, but then north was that way, you're going to be off. Okay, you can follow the guidance system, and the guidance system might be telling you one thing, but if the guidance system is not right, then you'll be going in the wrong direction. So just a few more pointers, though, on this fall, this descent. And if you think about it, I would say, if you have teenagers and you've gone through your 30s, it's almost like that's when we get to a point where we can start to say, okay, you know what, I see what's going on now. And so we're hoping that by the time you reach between 30 and 33, and the 30 to 33 is really important. That's also the act of Christ that came in. There is a symbolism there where birth and death comes in. Anyway, so we see the collapse of our world, and some people don't make it, and some people actually keep going in that collapse because of one reason or the other, right? We have to then figure out how it is that we are going to, what we consider, crucify the ego. Between 30 and 33, crucifixion. And crack our pride, shatter the pride. I'm telling you, if we try to go through this with our pride intact, we are not gonna be intact. All right, let me now go through some of the books and what they say about this as well. So the Corpus Hermeticum says, the vice of the soul is ignorance. The vice of the soul is ignorance. It knows nothing of what truly is. So don't feel bad. This has been known for thousands of years. When we get out of the ignorance and out of the delusion, then we're hoping that will help us later on. Let's take what the Bhagavad Gita says. It says, enveloped in ignorance, this delusion misleads the embodied one. Enveloped in ignorance, this delusion misleads the embodied one. What this is knowledge. The Upanishad said, into blind darkness enters they that worship ignorance. Into blind darkness enters they that worship ignorance. Worship. Worship. W-O-R ship. Worship is your action. Worship is work with stewardship. It is how you perform the things you do. It is the outside manifestation of stuff. And one of the things with the word worship, as I said, is work in stewardship. That is what's going to tell how it is that you are doing the things that you're doing. I think I said I was going to give you the esoteric meaning of worship. This is actually it. We'll go into some of the other ones later. All right, let's hear what Buddha has to say about this one. All that we are is because of what we thought. All that we are is because of what we have thought. I am not sure if I saw this before. I said we are what we thought ourselves to be. That's a T-H-O-U-G-H-T. And we are what we taught, T-A-U-G-H-T, ourselves to be. Trust me, that's us. It's our history. And so it's the breaking of that we'll have to do in order to get through from 30 to 33, where things are being crucified, 33 degrees, before we start the born again. So here is our takeaway from this. False righteousness and egoic wisdom needs to be shattered. This is what is considered the death and rebirth in all the text, whether it's in Hermeticism or in Buddhist or anything like that. Buddhist actually says it's a detachment of the self-construct. So where we are is at that 30 degree, 30 years of age, 33 degrees masonry, 33 ladders, 33 rungs of Jacob's ladder. It's really important at that point, because that is, now you're going to go to this ascend. And it's really difficult to get on that ladder to then go up from there if we are still holding on with all those other things that we just went through. So we now have to figure out how is it that we are going to move from the fall into the awakening. So here we are in the awakening. What's that? Finding the soul and restoring order. This is understanding suffering as a portal to wisdom. And that cannot be understated, because we all know between 30 and 60, man, those years can be very trying. Those years can be very testing. A lot of changes. When between 0 to 30, we're finding out ourselves. Between 30 to 60, we're trying to figure out ourselves and then saying, okay, is this it? What are all the challenges that's happening? So, but it's really during that period of time where it's our second lesson. And it's within our second lesson where we're going to work with the fact that we are now supposed to destroy who we are. But we can't destroy who we are right away. We can't destroy who we are right as we get to 33 and then say, okay, that's it. No, it's going to take us some time to undo all the things that have been done. It's going to take us some time to undo all the conditionings that we have gone through. It's going to take us some time to overcome the self that we have been placed into. Now again, this is allegorically, so it doesn't mean because you are 60 and you haven't done anything like this as yet, that means you are lost, right? So here is something from Job. Job just came straight out and said, man, why didn't you just cut me off while I was in the womb? You know, before this thing, I was better. I felt better. So you can check this out in Job 3, maybe 11 to 26. Let me go through some of the takeaways from this passage from Job. I'm going to give you the underlying meaning with it, right? Where he's cursing his birth. Well, that's him as his soul's descent into matter, right? The fact that we don't really like that. It would have been nice if this is something that we didn't have to go through. We didn't have to go through nature and fall down into nature, as they say, right? This is also the initiates, because we're being initiated into something. Really, we're being initiated into something. That's where the Freemasonry comes in. This is where alchemy comes in. And we have like the dark night of the soul that we're going through. And all this right here at that part is the dark night of the soul. And it says, why do we suffer? What's the reason for suffering? And that's why I said, that suffering is a portal to wisdom. Because a lot of times we learn more based on the suffering that we do than when things are going right. That's a messed up thing right there. Why do we do that? So we're also in the process of now confronting with our divine self, right? We're starting to understand our soul. When we go through there and we have gone through self, so remember, we go through spirit and we said soul, and we're going into the third dimension. So now we are starting to confront things with the higher mind from a different perspective, and we are removing some of our inner demons, and we're starting to understand how we really think and what are the attachments that we are that we have, okay? And why do the righteous suffer? And we're going through all these different things. And so all the different scriptures have people who go through this. The Bible does it in a way where they have multiple stories that are telling you the same thing. And these multiple stories are trying to teach us, these multiple stories are trying to give us ways to understand all the different types of suffering. And what we are supposed to do with that is we're supposed to then use that to look inside of us every time, okay? But unfortunately, just like we said earlier, we do things and we think it's right. We're deceived. It's self-righteous, and we keep going with that, thinking we're going down the right path. If it's comfortable, if you're making excuses, it's not the right path. I'm sorry. So as we go through here, we're starting to reflect on the darkness, reflect on the loss, surrender to the process that we are going through, and surrender to the higher calling, the wisdom that we are supposed to garner from this. There's a lot of great nuggets that we can take away from going through the various suffering that we go through. And we really do not have to suffer. It just depends on how attached we get before 30 and how stubborn we are after 30. Really, that's what it is. Because the more stubborn we are after even we know about these things and we say, hey, you know what, we're just going to keep hanging on to ourselves, then the harder it's going to be, and it really never stops. I mean, we can't shake it. And I myself have experienced some of that. I know other people who have experienced some of that, and we keep wondering, why do we keep suffering? But it's because we can't shake it. We cannot have false righteousness with this, and we can pretend and tell ourselves that everything is fine, but at the end of the day, it's really not gonna be, and we're just gonna repeat the process, unfortunately. So let's go through what some of the scriptures say about this part and how it is that we get trapped here. So the Corpus Hermeticum says this: man, being of the image of God, fell in love with his shadow and entered into the darkness of ignorance. This is one thing with the Corpus Hermeticum. It really stresses on the fact that this is all because of the unknowing. And remember, when it says ignorance, it's really the unknowing. It's something that we don't know, right? The Bhagavad Gita says, you speak words of wisdom, yet you grieve for those who should not be grieved for. You speak words of wisdom, yet you grieve for those that should not be grieved for. This is where we talk all the nice talks about things. And then we say, well, we can't do this, or we cannot do that, or we just decide not to do it anyway because we grieve for the things that we want to hold on to. Can't work. Can't ascend. Holding on to it. And so this is why it's hard, because in order for us to go through that awakening, it's really about getting rid of the things that we started holding on to. So what did the Upanishads say? When one is free from desire, then he becomes immortal. When one is free from desire, then he becomes immortal. And I think it's in the Corpus Hermeticum, I think maybe book 1, where it says, if you're immortal, you cannot be mortal. And if you're mortal, you cannot be immortal. They're like oil and water. They don't mix. Okay? So you really have to get rid of one before you get into the other one. Now, Buddha, on the other hand, just like the, Hermes is always talking about ignorance where this is concerned, Buddha is always talking about suffering. Okay, so his thing is like, hey, dude, life is suffering. Take it or leave it. Life is suffering. Okay, you have to transcend suffering. You have to understand how to get yourself out of suffering, and that's the Buddhist way. He just cuts straight to the chase. You know what I mean? So the other part of this is, now that we know that we're here, now we have to have some dialogue with basically ourselves, right? And so it's called dialogue with the lower self. And one of the things I heard from Manly P. Hall, I think he was saying that somebody else said it. I don't remember who he said it, but he said, the soul in hell is the hell in the soul. Yep. Lots in there. In Psalms 42, verse 5, it says, why art thou cast down, O my soul? Why art thou in the depth? Deep depth call it unto depth, at the noise of thy watersprout. Right? You're in the abyss right here, man. We're going down, and it's like we can't see the top anymore because the bottom is getting brighter. Okay, but the whole thing, again, it's literally the same thing, right? It's the inner dialogue of the soul. Why hast thou cast down, O soul, is realizing that the soul itself is here and is wondering, And we're wondering, why has the soul cast us down? Well, the soul hasn't cast us down. We're just feeling detached from it because of all the things that we do. And so here is when we're supposed to use our guidance system with the ego and our emotion and what we feel and our feelings to actually get back there and start to do things that may hurt in the beginning because we're tearing away from ourselves. And then it will get better, as opposed to doing things that feels good and thinking that's going to make us get better, which there's a conundrum there, because feeling good is better than being right. However, you don't want to feel good and get misled. Wow. Yeah, so this is why at the end of the day, like, I'm going through this, but as I've always said, it's really difficult to give general information on this and expect that it is going to be able to help guide everyone. All our situations are different. And so if you're needing help navigating through certain things, if you're really needing help navigating through certain things, not that you want someone to just talk to and you just want to say the words, right? You want to, if you're not looking to just say the words and not doing the work through stewardship, then you can come and talk with me. Contact us. We'll be able to sort of help guide you through. I am going through a lot of it right now. I am still in the transformation system, and I am seeing where a lot of the stuff that I've experienced before that caused pain, that I've now decided to go in the opposite direction, is now letting things be better. It's really opening up a lot of different avenues for me in terms of my spiritual development, my spiritual growth and development. So if you're ever in that situation, go ahead, reach out to us so that we can offer some guidance if you feel so called to work with us. So let's now see what some of the books have to say about this, right? And maybe some guidance that it can help. Here is what the Corpus Hermeticum says. It says, withdraw into yourself and it will appear. If you do not see yourself as beautiful, be the sculpture. Okay? You're the one that can create your own beauty. The Bhagavad Gita says, for one who has conquered the mind is your best friend. But for one who has failed, it's your worst enemy. Buddha says, self is the master of self. Who else could be the master? Now we're into the purification stage. This is actually a pretty good stage, but we still have a lot of cleaning up to do. It says it's purification, right? In alchemy, you purify, and then you purify, and then you purify, and then you purify. And it's almost like you're never done purifying, okay? But it can be a great state, because at least what you're doing now is you don't have all the messy material, right? But you are fine-tuning all these different things that you're going through. So the fight is different. The wrestle is different. The understanding as to what you are looking for as an outcome is a little bit more clearer. So there are a couple different parts in here that we can go through that can help with this. If you're here, when you get here, you will start to recognize it's less of a burden going through it than it was for the first half. Because this is after you have crossed the line of remembering. Now you're starting to remember certain things. Okay, you are between the 60 and 90 age range in the allegory. And the things are coming back to you easier because you've gone through some of the other things before. So one part of this is actually in Genesis, and Genesis 32, 24 to 30. And this is where Jacob, I think, was wrestling with the angel. This is an allegory. This is filled with metaphors and allegory across the board. Okay, it says, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled with a man, with him until, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the break of day. Going through, and he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. This is the understanding that we know what the outcome is supposed to be. So we are going to struggle through this. We are going to take on that fight. And we are not going to let go until our blessing comes. That's not an easy thing to do, right? That's not an easy thing to do. This is why I think his hip got fractured in the tussle that he was going through, right? And so it also means that as we do this, we are going to feel injured. All right, we're not going to come out feeling whole. We are going to be injured. And so this is wrestling with the inner self, our shadow aspect, the part of us that we, even from the 30 to 60, we really didn't want to come up. But before we can go through the other side, we now have to deal with the shadow. Okay, we have to deal with the shadow. This is the fighting through the night. This is the confrontation with the different forms of identities that we have, the different forms of spiritual identity, right? His name was changed to Israel at that point. And what this is telling us is we cannot be the same person. We have to change identity if we are going to if we're going to take this journey. I think there are a couple different books that actually tells us that, once we know this, it's really hard for us to go back. It's really hard for us to unknow this and then decide that we're going to step back into that which we came from. Right? And so that switch, that change of name, is also a change of identity. So if you're not ready to change identity, ready to literally change your name, literally ready to fight the good fight and have the bruises that it requires, it's really hard to then get into that section. Again, we have some time to do this, so it doesn't mean that, hey, if you're not ready now, that means you won't be ready next year. We hope that there is still always a chance as we go through. That's what we would call the transformation through direct experience. This is where the Gnostics come in. And with the Gnostics, that's why it's gnosis, it's knowledge, right? But it's a different form of knowledge. It's a knowledge that's sprinkled with spiritual awareness. It's not just information. It's not just something where we go, hey, I know what this is. You feel, you taste, you touch, everything about it, okay? And so that wisdom is now the catalyst for us to move through, and that personality being changed, and we are being presented with a new creation as we go through this. It's like having the wisdom of source, the wisdom of the creator, the wisdom of God inside of us as we go through. And let me read Proverbs 8. This is particularly in alignment with some of the Hermetic principles of wisdom. It says, "The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way." The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way. I was set up for everlasting from the beginning. this really, now you're remembering that the fall wasn't punishment, that the fall wasn't something that we should be sorry about. We're remembering that we had him in us from the very beginning. So we were set up from everlasting from the beginning. We were set up to actually be here, right? And so it's a great thing. As I said, it makes you feel a little bit better, or actually feel a lot better when you start realizing that you weren't being punished for something that you don't even know what you did. Also, I'll be going to Ecuador to celebrate the fall equinox this September 20th till the 25th. In the description below, I'll have all the information on that as to where we are going, what we're going to be doing. And so if you want to join us, I would really love to see you there. So head down in the description below and it will give you all the information on what's going on for this Ecuador trip to celebrate the fall equinox. Now back to the video. So let's go through some of the books from that has different things about this. So the Corpus Hermeticum and book number 8 says, I am mind, the father of the word. Again, the same thing echoes everywhere. Know the light and be reborn. Know the light and be reborn. If you know the New Testament, there's a lot about that in here. And from here, from the remembering, is really where the New Testament actually comes in. There is going to be a lot of reference, especially in the next video, about stuff in the New Testament, about how it is that we shift over and how it's done. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, having seen what was never seen before, my heart is trembling with fear and joy. Having seen what has never been seen before, my heart is trembling with fear and joy. Now that I remember, you go, oh my gosh, wow. You fear some of the things that had happened, but you're so joyful to realize, you know what? I'm in a good place. Things are going to get better. Things are looking up. The Upanishad says, that which is beyond words, beyond the mind. It's experience. Okay? That is the self. That is truth. That which is beyond word, beyond the mind, that is self. That is the truth. Buddha in the Lankavatara says, mind is like an illusion, a dream, a bubble. With realization, one is free. Now, let's look at what some of the books say about this. So the Corpus Hermeticum in book 1 says, out of the light comes a holy word, and it became a world. That's us. The light that became a holy word. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, the one who is happy within, whose joy is within, whose light is within, that person is liberated. The Upanishad says, he is the one hidden in all being, all pervading, the self within all. God is within us. Buddha says, why do you not seek the light? You know why? It's the love that we have for that. All traditions speak of light that has never left us. We've just forgotten. And so, to close, which is, I would call this the invitation for transmutation. We have the inner demon, that's the vanity. Whether it's the vanity of effort or the vanity of stuff, that we surrender to divine wisdom. The vanity of effort and the vanity of stuff is where we do all these things because we think that's what we should be doing. And the spiritual invitation there is just to surrender to divine wisdom and realize we are here to go through our journey ourselves. We are really not here to be the carrier of other people's burden. We can help, but we can't save. Okay? Another inner demon is suffering without cause. Suffering without cause. And we actually do cause a lot of our suffering, and that means that's the suffering without cause, because it's not there for our cause, we're just causing it. Okay, so embrace the mystery of the transformation, embrace the mystery of the change, so that the suffering is not without cause. Whatever it is that is happening, we have to figure out, so how is this helping me? What are some of the things that I'm gonna learn from this in order for me to get better later on? Because everything we do here is really a lesson. It's a life lesson in all we do. Okay. Another part is inner conflict, integration of higher and lower selves. When we have the inner conflict, that's really trying to integrate both sides of us with the lower self and the higher self. Remember I said that emotion and the ego and the things that we feel are our guidance system as to how far or how close we are to our spirit, unless, well, the guidance system is broken, right? If it's not, then it really can help you very well. Self-righteous blindness. Self-righteous blindness. Be very careful of that. We have to open to divine discernment. And if you find yourself explaining away things, letting yourself feel good, or being comfortable, being satisfied, well, we can't do any better, that's just who we are. Well, I like this here, I like it how it is, so I think I deserve to be able to do XYZ. I'm doing the best I can, but you might be doing the best you can. That's actually not a bad one, but don't use it as a crutch. The best you can is with everything you have, but if the best you can only makes you feel better, then maybe it's not the best you can, it's the best you want to do, not necessarily what you can. Then we have the existential dread, right? And this is the awakening to the immortal soul. It's the existential dread, because the mortal soul does not like it. Does not like it one bit. Hopefully you were able to stay with me until the end. As I said, this was going to be a big topic. We're trying to squeeze a lot of different things in here. And it's the entire package. This is not going to be all that you'll need to go through this, but it's definitely a start. And I'm hoping that this will help you to prepare yourself for the next in the video series, when we'll discuss some of the reasons that this is happening, and then how to break through what is considered the matrix. Until next time, thanks for joining. Be sure to leave a comment, tell us what you think. Like this video, share. If this is your first time and you haven't subscribed, please go ahead, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you will be notified of all our other upcoming videos. And yeah, come back and see me in the next one, or go ahead and watch some of the other videos that are on our channel. And namaste, and thank you for joining.